As I was closing up for the night, I thought about all the movies that had been discussed in the spoiler room. That was when the temperature in the room changed. I went to the thermostat and it said it was 52 degrees KB. Suddenly, I found myself in a maze of movie posters. No matter what direction I went, each path led me back to one actor, Kevin Bacon. That was when it was clear what I had to do. When I snapped out of it, I added bacon to the menu. 2020 was going to be an interesting year in the spoiler room. Yes, my friends, you can smell it in the spoiler room frying in the pan. That's some bacon. And we're going to be doing bacon all year. Yes, that's right. For some odd reason, I decided why not play 52 degrees of Kevin Bacon? And what we're doing is each month you're going to have a Kevin Bacon episode. And in between those movies we cover where it stars Kevin Bacon, we're going to be covering movies that connect one movie to the other through the people who star in them. If you've ever played 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, you know what I'm talking about. And as we go along in these episodes, you'll catch on pretty quick. But tonight, why not start off with the one that, for horror fans like the gentleman who's joining me tonight, the horror miser himself, Lamont, we know Kevin Bacon from Friday the 13th. But Lamont, tonight we're going to talk about Footloose. Thanks for joining us. How you doing, sir?
Pretty good, pretty good. Well, glad to be right back at the spoiler room. I hope everyone had a safe and happy holiday, and it's time to talk about Footloose.
Yeah, Footloose. Yes. The Did you want to give the synopsis, or would you like me to give the synopsis of Footloose?
You go ahead and give the synopsis
Okay.
on this one.
This one, it's pretty straightforward. We have Kevin Bacon, who plays Ren. You gotta love that name. Who's from Chicago, and he moves to a very small country town where rock music and dancing have been banned by the leaders, the town board. And he has a rebellious spirit, and he can't take it, so he decides to fire things up and try to hold a dance at the city. And we see how that rocks the boat in this small, quiet town as he tries to bring a little lively dancing to everybody once again and let the rock and roll be heard. Um, an interesting film. Lamont, we'll get down to the nitty gritty, but what are just your initial thoughts of this? You remember when you first saw it?
Yeah, I didn't see it in the theaters. I actually
Mhm.
saw it on I think when did this come out?
19.
'94, maybe on Beta, but
Yep.
definitely one of because my I had a friend of mine and he had all these beta tapes,
Hmm.
and we had a whole bunch of movies on beta tapes, and so I think I saw a whole bunch of movies I didn't see in the theaters, and this was one of them. It was an interesting story to say the least. When I'm looking at the movie and I'm seeing the people, and my thought is going back to the '50s when people thought rock and roll was bad. You know, when the
Hmm.
Beatles came in here, everyone thought rock and roll is bad, and your kids are gonna go crazy and they're gonna do bad things. And seeing this in small towns kind of makes sense because even in small towns, even at that time, still did not want people or their kids to be influenced by rock and roll or at this point 80s music.
Some people would argue, why would you want your kids to enjoy 80s music? But the rest of us, absolutely. Yeah, it does have that 50s, the town does have that 50s feel because back then, let's face it, there's going to be some back in my day sort of things going on tonight's episode, folks. It's 1984, and so you're only 30 years out from the 50s. So, and you didn't
Mhm.
have the internet, so
No.
you had more isolation of these
Mhm.
communities, these small town communities where everybody knows everyone, everyone grows up there, So of course you get your common characters in here as well with the town, the most attractive girl in the town, if you will, the one most sought after, who happens to be the preacher's daughter. She happens to be the wild
Hmm.
one who wants to just get out of this cowpoke town. And, everybody else is like, why? We like it here. We like the simple life. Her dad's very religious. And so the town is led by its religious leaders. And yeah, it is a very 50s feel to it. Um, so when the film starts off, you're like, oh, okay, so this is kind of the whole, uh, modern age coming into the, the old age and going to wake them up sort of film. And yeah, it. When I remember when I saw it as a kid, I remember most of the music. I mean, you know, it's got the Kenny Loggins song, Footloose. I mean,
Hmm.
played everywhere on the radio. It was, a big hit. Actually, this whole soundtrack was a big hit. It got nominated. The song got nominated, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah, yeah. When I was researching this, I had forgotten that it did.
Yeah, because I was wondering if it hit any, Academy Awards at all with it, because everybody remembers this film. And watching it again, I haven't watched it for a long time, and part of the reason we're doing the 52 degrees of Kevin Bacon is because of Dawn, who just wanted to talk about Kevin Bacon films. I'm like, okay, and then I was the one that
Mhm.
decided to be the masochist and try to connect them all. But uh, this one is the one that a lot of people think of Kevin Bacon when you talk about his early work, and it's because of that music. It did you feel, Lamont, does this almost kind of play out like a musical in some ways?
It does,
Hmm.
because it's like this. When I think of Footloose, the first thing comes to my mind is the Blues Brothers,
Hmm.
and to me that's like, even though I know that's a musical, but to me it's more like a story. Just like Footloose is a story, but it has a bunch of songs in it. But that's what Footloose reminds to me. I think that's one of the reasons why I enjoyed it, is because you have a story and the songs aren't bad.
Yeah, yeah,
and
the-
the songs aren't bad. And of course, you got Kenny Loggins in, and you can never forget that song.
well, for a short time, Kenny Loggins seemed to be in every movie. I mean, we had I'm All Right with Caddyshack. I mean, for
Hmm.
for a short time, he was on the radio because he was getting the movie gigs, man. Uh,
Hmm.
but this one, yeah, Kenny Loggins. I mean, the signature song. And it's not just that, though. The whole soundtrack to this movie actually is pretty solid, and it does help emphasize the action that's going on. Sometimes you get these soundtracks where the music is just accompanying or playing in the background, but here it's integral into the movie and obviously the plot, because they're talking about bringing back rock and roll. To to the
Hmm.
those Some people would argue that some of the songs on the soundtrack might not necessarily be rock and roll, but still, yeah, a very entertaining soundtrack that you could listen to, and it helps emphasize the situations. But yeah, the first half is basically getting introduced to this town, and so Kevin Bacon is playing the cool guy, just trying to kind of fit in, stuck in a bad situation with his single mom. They're living with his uncle and aunt and their kids, and so he's a big guy in a small town, and he's trying to get the lay of the land. And then there's the wild one, Ariel, the daughter of the Reverend Shaw Moore, who's played by John Lithgow fantastically. Man, I forgot how many
He does.
cool
He does a good job in his movie too.
I forgot how many people were in this film too. It's like,
Yeah, I
oh
know.
man, I'm watching it going, oh, that's holy crap. But she is wild, and in the beginning, you think she's just the popular girl with the, I guess, jerk yet popular boyfriend. But
Hmm.
there's more to Ariel than that as this film goes along, which really surprised me. I mean, because I don't remember watching this since I was a kid, but what did you think of the Ariel character in this?
It was fascinating, the fact that she has more to her than just being the wild, rebellious girl.
Hmm.
Once we find out more about her character, and I thought that was another good aspect of the movie. These her character is not the cliche bad girl,
Right.
bad girl. Yeah, there's more to her as we learn more about the character, about her. Yeah.
Yeah, she's not just rebellious. I mean, she's just not the rebellious one just to get back at Daddy. There's more to her than that. Which
Hmm.
I think that's what it is about this film that appeals to so much, because on the surface, if you look at just the very basic synopsis and the first act and a half of this film, it feels like kind of your basic, okay, small town, big guy, he's going to change the town, and all these characters are kind of cookie cutter. But then as they go along, you realize that the tone of this film really shifts from being about Ren and being in town to almost being about John Lithgow's character and Ariel,
Hmm.
doesn't it? It kind of shifts tone and focus about halfway through the film. Did
Oh
you?
yeah, yeah. Because one of the things as we learn why he decided to ban dancing and rock music, and once we find out that's the reason why he did it, I'm like, okay, now that kind of makes sense. He's not being the typical strict father. There is a reason why he decided to ban dancing and rock music.
Yeah,
Rock music. So I that's what I like. Even though I kind of thought that back then when I first saw it, I said that's kind of cliche. But as I got older, I says, well, then I could understand his grief.
right. I mean, when you become a parent, especially, you look at it through different eyes because, and this is a spoiler room, folks, because we learn later on that Ariel's older brother ended up dying
Mm,
because after a dance and rock and roll of drinking and doing drugs because of the rock and roll, they end up dying. He ended up dying in just a basic accident on a bridge. He ended up dying, and
mm,
that sent the dad over the edge because he was grieving. And what I thought about interesting, and John Lithgow just plays this character so well. I love John Lithgow in just about everything he does. But in this one, he plays this reverend who actually is hypocritical and doesn't see his hypocrisy at first, because I thought it was interesting
mm,
how he's banned music and rock and roll, but he's
mm-hmm.
against banning books, which the very
Yeah,
religious ones of the community want to burn, which was a big thing back, especially in the 80s, of
yeah.
curriculum. What'd you think of that?
Hmm. Yeah, I actually thought that was fascinating. I actually thought that was a nice contrast
Hmm.
to John Lithgow's character. He's like, yeah, I'm going to ban rock and roll, but no, I'm not going to fall into that censorship trap where I'm going to start banning. I'm going to start banning and burning books that
Hmm.
people don't think it's appropriate for our kids to read. So I thought that was a nice character trait that they displayed. So you got to give the writers credit for making that character not fall into the typical cliches
Hmm.
that we see in these type of movies.
Yeah, he is not against everything, which I
Hmm.
enjoyed as well. It was like, but at the same time, they're putting the audience, and the audience are just looking at his character, going, "Dude, you're being a hypocrite. Don't you see how you're being a hypocrite?" you know. So I really enjoyed that quite a bit, and his character, the arc that he takes at the end, in which, because Ren decides to take on the city council, and of course he's got the backing of many of the youth in town and even
Hmm.
some of the adults for doing a dance. And of course the city board is made up of all of very faithful and religious folks, and the Reverend has already talked to them and made his case to them. So they, of course, kind of railroaded him, as Ren's boss tells him. But they don't. What I found interesting as this film went on is, as we get to the third act, and I know we're jumping around, folks, but we will, as we always do here in the spoiler room. But when we get to the third act, you don't actually get him approving of the dance in town, but
Yeah.
he he says it's okay, and we have to trust our kids to not just go off on wild orgies and drug benders by dancing, but at the same time they don't actually vote to be able to have the dance at the high school. I thought that was interesting, didn't you? On the twist of it,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. I kind of suspect that's where the movie was going, though.
Hmm.
So, because unfortunately, especially at that time, me and my best friend, we were a bit cynical of some movies when they do stuff like this. So we were first watching it. We started making jokes about, well, of course they're still going to do the dance, but they won't be able to do it in the town.
Hmm.
They'll just have to do it in the town where it's not, so they can go ahead and have their fun. So but I understand the purpose of it now as I got older.
Hmm.
As I got older, I understood the aspects of why the characters did that.
Yeah, and same here. And watching it, I'm like, oh, okay. And it was an interesting compromise, and I like that because yeah, you would fully expect the way this film goes, especially when it was made. That oh, at the end, hey, everybody saw Ren's way was right and everybody else's way was wrong, and so we're just going to change the laws and hey, dancing in the streets. But they don't exactly do that now.
No.
What I found interesting, and I had to do some research on this because in '84 I was rather young, but I didn't pick up on it. They're talking about drinking. And if you're watching it now, you're going, these are high school kids. They're going into a
Hmm.
bar, they're purchasing alcohol, and it's okay. And that's when I had to look back and realize, going, oh, the 20 drinking age for 21 didn't go till uh, October of the year this film came out. So when the film was made, 18-year-olds were able to drink. Would, is this one of those examples about of where perspective's a little bit different when you look at it now versus back then? Because I found it a bit shocking.
Uh, because at that time I didn't know about different states had different laws when it came to the age of legal drinking. Because I was in Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania legal drinking age is 21.
Right.
21, yeah, 21. So at the time, I'm thinking to say, that did not catch on to me. I says, wait a minute, they're young. Are they drinking young? But I said, oh well, it's like, but then, like I said, it's like, but everyone does that. So I didn't think that much into that particular scene about them drinking and they're only 18 years old. Because I mean, they're 18 years old. I'm just thinking that says, hey, look, I've done it before. I've gone into bars, and gotten away
Hmm.
with buying alcohol under the age of 21. So I'm just thinking they're doing the same thing too. So I really didn't think that much
Right.
about it because at the time I didn't know that different states had different legal ages of drinking.
Yeah, and I wasn't aware of that either. I mean, because for as long as I remember, it was 21. But
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay, so that explains it. How we're just nonchalantly how the adults are talking about, drinking, and also our hero Ren, who. Of course, some people in the small town don't like big town Ren, and so they make it difficult.
Mm-hmm.
You have so the bully, if you will, who's also the a-hole boyfriend of Ariel, he tries to set him up
Yes.
by putting drugs in his pocket and then
Mm-hmm.
egging him on into fights and causing problems, as his uncle says. We get this emotional scene where he's just pissed, and so he cranks up the music, but he comes out of
It
his
starts saying,
yeah. But before we get to the dancing, he comes out of his car, Lamont, and he's got a beer bottle. And I'm just like, he's 18 and he's drinking. This is just throwing me off. I had to look it up. I had to pause the film and going, okay, something's. What am I missing? Was it because my history on that as well was a little foggy. So I'm just like, oh well, he shouldn't still be drinking and driving, but he's just drinking a beer in public like it's right. I'm like, okay. Uh, Now, one thing I didn't remember as a kid, but watching it now, and I thought it was interesting, but it also explains his dancing and the
mm-hmm.
um, rather interesting dancing. Reminds me of a Eddie Murphy skit way back then. But it, his dancing, the way he dances, everything, they set it up. He's a gymnast. I forgot that angle that he was actually a gymnast, and I think that was actually a smart move because does that then kind of explains, how he's just not a dancer out of the blue. I mean, he's got some gymnastic skills to go along with that. I mean, it,
Hmm.
it I just thought that was interesting. Do you think that helps making him a gymnast? Does that give him a different aspect to kind of explain a little bit easier of his dancing rather than him just busting out into some really wicked dance moves?
It does kind of help because again, when I first saw the film and that scene when he's dancing, me and my friend are being cynical, talking about that looks more like gym moves, not really dancing.
He looks like he's putting on gymnastic
Yeah,
routine, is what it
yeah,
is. Yeah. Uh,
yeah. It's like that's dancing. I said that's not the last time. I haven't
well,
saw dancing like that before.
for some of us in the '80s, yes, that was dancing.
Yeah,
Not
I know.
not exactly good dancing, but like I said, reminds me of the Eddie Murphy skit from Raw. So it's
Oh yeah.
on how certain people dance, and I'm like, you know what? You're 100% correct.
So y'all listen to the words or the beats.
Oh, I love that skit. But yeah, so I thought it was interesting that here we have Ren, who's a cool guy, but he's actually gymnastics, which, in all honesty, that's not something you kind of equate with your hero, especially back then, and being the
Hmm.
cool guy. And who else? Though I will find Kevin Bacon was believable as a gymnastics guy. You saw how he was. The person who I had a little bit of trouble believing at first that he was in gymnastics, though, was, and I forgot he was in here, a rather young Chris Penn.
Uh-oh.
What'd you think of Willard, Lamont?
Oh, he's the best person. He, out of all the characters I liked about this Willard because he was so funny. um, because I think because I remember the scene where they go to this bar
Hmm.
outside of the town, and of course he can't dance, and then he gets into this jealous fight because I guess he's trying to some dude tried to dance with a girl that he liked and he didn't
Yeah.
like it, so he gets to jealous fight. So of course Ren has to teach him how to dance. So it reminded me of Rocky 3.
Any Rocky montage. But yeah, we get the montage with a very cool song, but we get a montage of Ren teaching fairly quickly Willard how to dance. And, you know, knowing Chris Penn's later roles, it's really kind of hard to sit there and go think of him as a dancer, but
Dancing.
of a dancing guy because he's usually plays the kind of the heavy, the brute, the fighting guy, which he does in here. He
Yeah.
gets into brawls quite easily. I mean, we get the one scene where the a-hole and his, of course, hanger-ons are picking on Ren, and then Willard comes out to defend Ren, and he basically takes on all three guys at once. he just and he pushes them into a phone booth. Yes, there's a phone booth in here, folks. That kind of dates it, but uh,
Yeah.
the relationship between Ren and Ariel I thought was most interesting because well, you could tell he likes her, of course, she actually pursues him more than he does her at first because he
Hmm.
doesn't want trouble because he just sees, oh, this is the way it is. So I thought there's an interesting change in dynamic with this one than we're, I think, normally used to seeing in young adult type films like this. Would you
Yeah.
say that's a little bit different?
Yeah, because he really doesn't pursue. He likes her, but he really doesn't really pursue her. She morely pursues him,
Hmm.
and I think it's because when you have when you have a person such as Ren's character come into a small town, that's going to draw the attractions of girls who want to have a different relationship than the dudes that they grew up with. The typical towny guys.
Well,
You know,
we've seen the towny guys. We don't exactly blame them. I mean,
yeah.
I want to just date Kevin Bacon's hair, personally, no, in this film. But well, I like it because he's hesitant because you almost get the feeling at first maybe she's looking at him as a way out of town too, because she's really wanting to get out of town. She's going to join a college, a way that her
Mm.
dad doesn't even know. But she is rather wild, and there's, as we mentioned before, some things going on, because we get this scene later on where she's really trying to pursue and get the attention of Ren. She takes him to this area where the kids write all this stuff like poetry and stuff on a train car, and then she stands in
Mhm.
front of a train waiting for him to save her. And she just, I mean, this isn't the first time she plays in the face of danger. Do you get the impression she's doing this because she's dealing with the fact that, or having a hard time dealing with the fact in her own way that her brother passed away? Because it almost seems like she's got a death wish of sorts.
Yeah. That's what when I rewatched the film, and that's what I got. It's obviously that neither her or her father or even her mother
Right.
never got the emotional support or the psychological support that they needed to deal with uh, that kid's death. And
Right.
that tends to happen when you don't get the support that you need or you don't get the help that you need. Stuff like that happens. You can get a death wish.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you ever saw The Loved Ones.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The golf looking girl.
Yeah.
You
Yep.
know, she was the one that really needed someone to talk to. You see her reaction to when we find out later on it was her brother that got killed
Mm-hmm.
earlier in the movie, and you see that she has that real deep dark depression, and obviously she did not get the help that she needed, and that's what the whole family should have gotten. Something done. Shouldn't They should have went to talk to somebody.
Which you get the impression in a town like that, there wasn't probably a whole lot of people that they could talk to and get possibly a non-biased or just
Mm-hmm.
a thoughtful ear, because the whole town is very opinionated. So,
Mm-hmm.
or if they went to someone like a counselor, there's no guaranteed in a small town like that it's not going to get out. However they're
Mm-hmm.
feeling, it's not going to get out to the rest of the town, of what they said. So, yeah, but that's what surprised me with this film is, at the beginning, oh, light, okay, music, Kenny Loggins, yay. And then halfway through in the rest of the film, it gets kind of heavy. And you start thinking of these characters where you're like, holy crap, this family is still hurting. And this is kind of dark. And oh man,
Mm-hmm.
where's my happy music, Lamont? You,
Oh man.
I mean,
And,
but it makes it interesting. Uh, I liked that though, because it changes up what back then you did have your kind of formulaic, happy kind of, as you mentioned, it made you very cynical, because a lot of times the films of that age, especially when involving teenagers, kind of took, a happy turn. But this actually film ends up becoming fairly balanced, which
mhm.
which I enjoy quite a bit. And can you tell the difference between 80s storytelling and storytelling of today? How much of the stuff happens off camera? Did you catch that this time around watching Lamont? How much stuff, like, we don't actually see scenes like you might now of the actual full vote or these other scenes going on. We kind of find out after the fact.
Yeah, that's different. I'm pretty sure if which I don't know. Did you ever? I want to jump ahead, but did you see the so-called remake?
I did not, because when I watched the trailer and saw an explosion, I was like, Footloose doesn't have explosions. Why is there an explosion in the trailer? I'm good. I'll watch the original. I'm fine. Uh, I
Yeah,
don't.
I don't think back then, which is a bit surprising because you would think back then you would see more non-PC stuff in
Hmm.
movies back then, as you really don't see that now
Hmm.
in movies. So I'm surprised some of the stuff that they didn't show you would normally would see in a movie back then, as opposed to now.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and not only that, but less handholding. I mean, we don't see the vote from the town board even after
Mm-hmm.
Ren gets help from Ariel, who gives him the Bible passages. So he even tries to
Mm-hmm.
use the Bible back into the face of the town, saying, "Hey, look, even in the Bible, people danced. What's wrong with you people?"
Yeah, I thought it was a very effective scene. It's like, yeah, they did dance back in those days.
hmm you get that, but you don't find out the vote till afterwards when his boss is mentioning he got railroaded. I'm like, oh, so it didn't go through, or later on,
Mm-hmm.
you get the scene where he's asking her to the prom, but we don't. There was a conversation between Ren and the Reverend we never actually see. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
if we do, we just get the very tail end of it, and I'm like, wow, they're actually kind of leaving it up to the audience of what's going on, and it was kind of refreshing.
Yeah, yeah. I thought that was a nice touch, that the fact that they decided not to film that. And I guess if it was done in today's um, filmmaking, I don't know if they would probably do something a little bit different to
hmm
try to make it more. No, they were probably would actually do the filming of them voting, but in
Right.
order to make it suspenseful, they won't show the final vote. They'll just have the people start raising their hand, but then they'll cut the scene.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Try to make it suspenseful.
try to make it a little more suspenseful, which they don't here.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, I mean we've got Ren and Ariel and Shaw. They're interesting characters, and then Diane West, who I forgot was in here, is playing the wife. And there's an interesting relationship between our Reverend and his wife as well. The, you know, as a young kid watching this, well, not I was like 9 or 10, but still, you remember the music and the dancing and don't really pay attention to the slower bits. And now watching it back, I'm going, man, these characters have a lot of depth for a film
Mm-hmm.
of this nature. They cover a lot of ground, and I love that. Not only that, but then you get the relationship between Ren and his mom, played by Frances Lee
Mm-hmm.
McCain. Um, and I believe that she was the one that played his mom, wasn't it?
Um,
Or was it? Or that was his aunt, maybe, Frances. But there's so many big names. I am horrible. I apologize,
yeah,
folks.
no,
But yeah, then there was that interesting.
no, it was Francis Lee McCain.
It was okay. Then you had,
Yeah.
their relationship as well, which you're covering a hot topic in the 80s of a single parent and divorce because as I'm sure you remember, Lamont, very hot topic for a number of years in headlines was increases in divorce and single parents in that, and we even touch on that in Footloose, don't we?
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah. No,
so
because I
go
don't
ahead.
I don't think they go into depth into what happened to his father. I think the only thing we know is that she sees. I think they're divorced or something happened, but they really don't get into that much between his father.
No, the only thing that they really mention is that his dad abandoned him. Is what they
Oh,
did.
okay.
Yeah, they do mention that his dad abandoned them. Just his dad just up and left, which was one of his
Mm-hmm.
hooks to try to convince the Reverend Shaw to, uh, date Ariel, take her to the prom. Is well,
Hmm.
hey, you know what? Maybe if you figure out why they took my dad, I'll help you figure out why, the guy, the Lord took your son or whatever. It was just like, holy crap, you're getting
Hmm.
you're getting deep stuff like this. Where's my dancing? I want more dancing, man. But I loved all the heavy stuff. And speaking of heavy stuff, there's a scene in here where Ariel confronts her boyfriend, or her boyfriend confronts her
Hmm.
because he can tell she's paying more attention to Ren. And what'd you think of this scene with the fight between these two?
Um, is just I knew that that was going to happen.
hmm
They were going to fight. I was hoping that it didn't do it that way, but I figured that was going to happen. It's a typical fight when you have a bully because eventually you're going to have to kick his ass.
Yeah, but what about her fight with him? How kind of brutal it is. I mean,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That was kind of brutal. I was not expecting.
hmm I mean
Yeah, I
because
didn't expect it. I'm like,
because you figured, okay, he slapped her, but she goes at him, slugs him, and then starts going after his truck. I'm like, holy shit.
I think, and this is what I tell people all the time, is that you never underestimate anyone. And even though this is just a movie,
hmm
but still, her character was pushed to the brink where she couldn't take it anymore, so she just lashed out, and that's what happens. You know, like I tell everyone else, he's lucky that that's the only thing she did was just mess up his car.
She could have started beating him with the lead pipe instead of his
Yeah.
truck.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, yeah, this scene is actually, and that's kind of where the turning point is for sure of this film, is where things get really a
Mm-hmm.
little more serious and deep, is when she takes a pipe to his truck, and she's actually beat the crap, and she puts makeup on it, and it that's the one thing where you kind of get a little bit of small town cliche in here, is that type of fight between you know couples, because you do get that kind of, I mean, not that you don't get it in the city too, but it's kind of a stereotypical thing of the type of the women can give, as uh, can give it as much as the guys can, as far as beating the snot out of someone.
Mm-hmm.
Because she brings it too, and it's just so brutal the way it's acted out, and there's really no music. It's just, man, I'm like, wow, okay, they aren't kidding around here. um, so yeah, this film really takes some interesting turns, and covers some interesting topics, I think, and maybe I think that's why many people consider it a classic. I mean, the director Herbert Ross, he directed films kind of like this that actually had some humor, but also some depth to them as well. I mean, he eventually would go on a few years later, and direct Secret of My Success, which is a fun movie. um
Mm-hmm.
and he did My Blue Heaven. So I mean, this guy, he does kind of these films that give you a kind of a mixture of things. And do you think that helps maybe ground a film a little bit, to where this film could have been totally just fanciful musical? We do get these kind of real world topics and elements and themes in here. How do you feel? Do you think that maybe helps ground the film a little bit from being just a dance fantasy of sorts?
Because you don't want a typical cliche dance fantasy, teenage dance fantasy.
hmm
That's what High School Musical. That's what Disney does with High School Musical. You want to get that fantasy crap, you go watch that. Go watch that. But here, everything is grounded. You don't have cute looking, sexy looking people. You have ordinary looking people. When you can get Chris Penn to actually dance, if you really want to call that dancing, makes it more believable. It makes it more believable.
Hey,
So I think that's one of the reasons why I did like Footloose,
uh-huh.
because you just have ordinary uh, kids that
hmm
look like kids. You don't they're not sexed up. They're not dressed to the nines. They're not doing anything. They just want to have fun and have dance, and that's the reason why the film worked.
Yeah,
The film worked.
yeah, and I fully agree. Though, let us talk about the '80s casting, and these are supposed to be 18-year-olds. And
Hmm.
I think Kevin Bacon, was he 26 in this film, and
Hmm.
Ariel, played by Laurie Singer fantastically, she was like 27. they
Oh
did
yeah.
they didn't exactly, I mean, they looked young, but in
Hmm.
all honesty, I did not buy that they were teenagers.
Yeah, that's the only problem was like, yeah, we know that these people are adults because they don't look, but they look young enough to pull off the teenage look, but we know they're not actual teenagers.
I mean,
No, but I didn't mind that. I ain't mind that.
No, I don't mind that. I mean, you get that quite a bit in Hollywood, and for some of the
Mm,
things that they didn't hear, like we mentioned, the fight, which is rather brutal, and some of the drinking and other scenes that they go on in here, it does kind of it makes sense. They didn't want to put younger actors in peril, older ones. I mean, Chris Penn was freaking what, like 28 or 29 in his
hmm
film, So I mean, they aren't exactly young, though they do still look young in it. It's just when you get a story like this, I think you can look past some of that of how older they look, because the story is interesting that they have in here.
hmm
It's not just about Ren taking on city town, council to get a dance. And in fact, in some ways, and am I wrong, Lamont? It almost feels like the dance is a side story.
I think the dance is just the finale.
Right.
I never said it was just the finale because this is what they all wanted to do. No, they didn't win as far as winning, getting danced back into the town, but they still got to do their prom and dance.
Hmm.
So I think that's a kind of a win-win as far as that storyline is concerned. So yeah, we still lost, but hey, we still get to dance.
We still get to dance, yeah.
Mhm.
Dance like what some of us would call that. It's dancing. So, yeah, it ends up being a film that's more about the change of times, of compromise, and of dealing with loss. In all honesty, I mean, you've got Ren, who
Mhm.
lost his dad, and he lost his big city live in, and he's in a small town. And then you got Ariel and the Reverend, who lost, he lost his kid, she lost her brother. And so yeah, it's actually more about coping with loss than it is about,
Mhm.
hey, let's put on a dance like in Greece.
Mhm.
Because let's face it, on the surface, it kind of had, if you look at like the trailer and that, it almost looks a little bit like, oh, we're getting a film kind of like Grease, but you don't get that
That
here.
yeah. When I first saw the trailer, I saw, oh man, no man telling them to make another Grease thing again. That's probably one of the reasons why I didn't go see it in the theaters.
Sure, oh, I can understand that. And let's not forget too, Footloose brought us the song that we still hear today,
Mhm.
the one that made the big hit, "Holding Out for a Hero." But in the movie, it's used during a scene that, well, I'm from Wisconsin. Now I'm from Milwaukee, but I have a lot of family in the rural area. In all
Mhm.
honesty, playing tractor chicken with tractors, I loved that idea, but at the same time, I don't know how much more country you can get. And so you have this, Ren challenges a-hole boyfriend to Charlie, I think it is, to a chicken race with tractors. Um, and they play Holding Out for a Hero. And I'm like, you know what? I did remember that part from when I first watched it, but I'm like, this is not
Mhm.
exactly the scene I pictured this music going to.
Because I remember when I was rewatching the film and I see this scene, I'm like, they're playing this song in this here. This doesn't make any sense.
Well, it made
Uh,
it so
oh,
dramatic, though. I mean,
uh,
you know,
I guess it's the reason why because it does make it dramatic. Dramatic. Although I would never attempt to do anything like that. No.
well, we if you ever get caught on a country road, tractors, they move fast, but they aren't exactly the fastest vehicles on the planet.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
hmm
them coming towards one another, I was having flashbacks to kind of Austin Powers on the Zamboni, and the guy going to kill the guy with the Zamboni, and it's taking forever for him to get to him before he runs him over. I'm like sitting there going, but they edit it well to keep it moving because I'm sitting there going, yeah, this is going to be a long chicken race. I know tractors, but which is interesting because Ren doesn't drive tractors, but we're talking the 80s, so many people still drive sticks. So, he was able to get the basics of driving a tractor. So,
Mhm.
uh, I'd say the one person that probably really plays off cliche, some of the side characters do, but who really does, though, I will say, is the boyfriend. Wouldn't you say out of maybe
Oh,
all the characters who,
he's definitely cliched. I
yeah,
mean,
good
who's
old
looking?
Chuck.
Yeah, yeah, he's definitely a cliche character. I mean, put it this way: if you're going to have a cliche character, it's going to be him.
It's cliche small town guy who sees nothing wrong with the small town and doesn't understand why his girl wants to leave the town the moment she possibly can. And he, of course, she is. You get the impression too. She's dating him because not necessarily because he's the only choice in town, but because out of all the people, he's probably the guy that would tick off her dad the most. Did you get the
The
feeling
most,
of
yes,
that?
yeah, yeah. I that's the one thing I think about when I see girls who date guys like that in
Mhm.
small towns. I said they do it because they want to piss off their father.
Yeah, and we forgot to mention, and I do want to mention her. Sarah Jessica Parker is also in this. Yes, folks, as Ariel's
Yes, in this
friend,
movie.
as her Ariel's friend Rusty, and
Mhm.
I liked her character.
Oh yeah, I thought she was funny.
She was funny. I
Oh,
mean, she's the friend, but you get that scene where she's talking about how she stalked Ren, and
mm,
actually that was another thing that I found interesting in this film is we get this scene where after church, the girls get together in the car, and this is where we see Ariel for the first time playing chicken with a semi as she tries to, while the car and her boyfriend's truck are driving side by side, go from one to the other, which is in a pretty amazing stunt, actually. Uh, the girls and their discussion, I'm going to tell you, it was a refreshing and good way, but it surprised me. Out of all the characters we have in here, all the guy characters, the girls are the ones that are having the wildest conversation. Did you notice that?
oh yeah, that that did surprise me a bit.
Hmm.
Um, but me, of course, when I first saw that, and of course, me and my friend being cynical as we were, we says, well, you see, this is what girls really talk about when they're by themselves.
See, I knew it. This is what they actually talk about when they're by themselves. Yeah. Uh, and they even touch on the subject of teen pregnancy even in a small town as they talk about their friend who had her baby. And yeah, it just I liked it quite a bit. It just surprised me in the film, the conversation they have. And the only thing we have kind of close to it is when Ren is he befriends Willard, and he's talking about his experience in a club with a girl and her roommate. And then Willard asks,
Mhm.
"Really? Did that happen?" He's like, "No, man." It was like that was the only kind of conversation between the guys that you get that's a little bit risque, but the girls were talking much more frank about things than guys, and I got a kick out of that too. You know. So yeah, I mean, I overall I could kind of see why this is a classic because it does, I think, buck a number of expectations, and it's more than just really good soundtrack and dance moves. Um, there is more to it. I think for me, that's why I can see why it's a classic. What about you? What is it that you would say makes it a classic?
Kevin Bacon,
Yeah.
obviously, Kevin Bacon, the music,
Hmm.
the music. I think those are the two main one that make this a classic '80s movie. You have Kevin Bacon, you got the music, and I think the setting.
Hmm.
also making classic 80 music, because you normally would not see a setting like this in an 80s movie. Normally would be in an urban setting, not in a rural setting. But I think because of that setting, and they also kept it real and not fake,
Hmm.
I think that's what makes it such a good classic 80s movie. But no, but obviously the two things, Kevin Bacon and the music.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even in this, I mean, this is one of his earlier works. You can see the talent of Kevin Bacon. I mean, there's a
Mm-hmm.
reason why the guy is still working today.
Mm-hmm.
Even at this youth, and you had that the brat pack of sorts, that they called them too, that were in the Hughes films, and that you see these younger actors who actually had a chance to let their talent show. I mean, even the rest of the supporting young cast in this film, I think, does very well in it. I mean, he was in National Lampoons and Animal House, and he was in Friday the 13th, but this is really the one that a lot of people remember him for.
Yeah.
At least it's like their first Kevin Bacon film. Like how people talk about like their first Doctor, or what was your first horror film? What was your first Kevin Bacon film? Since he's been in so much, and it's like a lot of people say, well, Footloose is the one that, I mean, that just immediately comes to mind. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, you're right. His performance in here, the way his character is, really helps kind of pull you in and make it memorable. And then you've got all the extra stuff on it as well with John Lithgow and a great cast. And just yeah, it's one of those where you can't really judge the film by its trailer.
No.
Because in the 80s, yeah, we still get minor spoilers, but you didn't get major seeds or whatnot in the trailers, kind of like you do today, or spoilers like you do here in the spoiler room. So I think we'll wrap it up for the night. Footloose. We're kicking off our 52 degrees of Kevin Bacon, and yeah, I think it's a great starting point, because this is the one that really, if you're not a horror fan, a lot of people remember him for, and you can see why if you watch it again. And I didn't watch the remake. It's not because I figured I dislike it or whatnot. I just had no real interest in it, because this is one of those films where I'm like, does this story really need a remake? you know, I mean, yeah, I know that theme, but it's been covered before. But did we really need it? And why are there explosions? I may watch it one day, the remake, just to see why there's an explosion in the Footloose
Mm-hmm.
remake. Let's face it, Kenny Loggins' song is toe tapping, and they played it on the radio constantly.
Constant.
I
Oh
think the only
man.
one I remember being played as much was Ray Parker's Ghostbusters. Uh,
Oh yeah.
look,
Because
go ahead.
if you didn't hear Ray Parker's Ghostbusters, then you have Footloose. If you didn't hear Footloose, you hear Ray. So if you go to any of the top, or those top
Yeah.
20 songs on the radio back, that's the two songs you always hear.
Oh yeah. If you did hear one, you heard it the other, because they both were 1984. So the radio was filled with songs from movies, at least from two movies. I remember little side note about Ghostbusters music. My mom and I, every summer, we'd travel Wisconsin and camp around, and we were traveling up north. And I kid you not, in our 2 hour drive, I heard Ghostbusters 13 times on like five different radio stations. It was You'd either
Oh.
hear the whole song, or if you'd be switching channels, suddenly you'd catch part of it, or the beginning or the end, but it was played
Mhm.
so much. And Footloose was, yeah, pretty much the same. You heard it everywhere. But yeah, this is a good movie. It's a solid film. Is it nestled firmly in the 80s? Yes, but I think in a good way. I think this is one of those where it's not uh, so overly 80s that you're just rolling your eyes. I think there's a lot of interesting things that they do in this film that you may surprise you. So, yeah, so there you go, folks. 52 Degrees of Kevin Bacon kicked off. I hope you enjoyed this discussion. And I don't have anything too special at the end of the night outside of just saying that I will tease in a moment what film we've got next and leave it up to you to figure out how it's connected. But first, as always, I give my wonderful crew members who are very kind enough to come on the show the license to shill. So, Monty, it is your floor. Go ahead, sir. Shill away whatever you'd like to promote.
Okay, as you all know, I am celebrating my third year on
Woohoo!
YouTube. I actually have a contest that is running. It's a nice giveaway. If you go to www.youtube.com/therocko829, you go ahead and subscribe, hit that notification button, and you will see my contest video. And once you subscribe and you look at the rules, you get become eligible
Awesome.
to participate in the contest. But you do have to be a subscriber.
Awesome.
And I'm on my way to hitting 1,000 subs as well.
Yes, folks, check out his channel, and it's great stuff, Lamont. I love your views on horror films, especially, and definitely deserve at least 1,000 subs, if not more. So please check out his channel. The link will be in the description of the web page where this is being posted, and also it's on our webpage, specialmarkproductions.com. So Lamont, thank you so much for starting this journey. And yes, we are doing all year, we're playing. And so as we play our 52 degrees of Kevin Bacon, here's a little thought. The next film we're going to watch and review and talk about with lots of spoilers, as we always do, is 2010, the year we make content. Content. I'm making content all the time, so is Lamont. But no, 2010, the year we make Contact. Figure out how that is connected to Footloose through the people who starred in it, and give that some thought. And next week, you will find out as I give you the answer of how they're connected. So here we go, folks. I hope you enjoy this journey that we take this year in 2020. And now we'll just say a good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone. I'll see you guys later.
Cut Footloose. Oh, yeah. Hey, all my friends out there looking for more spoiler room goodness? Then why don't you check out our brand new Patreon page, patreon.com/specialmarkproductions, where you can get access to exclusive spoiler room episodes and a whole lot more. You can also find us on Facebook groups at SMPRD and onto Twitter at SpecialMarkPro. Let your voice be heard and let us know what you would like to see in the spoiler room, as well as just how we're doing in general. We appreciate your support, and remember, in the spoiler room, the conversation is fresh, but we do spoil the movies.